On today's show, we dig into our archives and wind back to 2013, where we head to Malalla Motorsport Park on the northern outskirts of Adelaide. We look back on the wild on-track action from round 2 of the 2013 V8 Touring Car Series. Then we dig deeper into our archives and go further back to 2006, where we head to the Sydney Superdome at Sydney Olympic Park. We look back on the 4th round of the 2006 Australian Supercross Masters. This is Speedweek.
Round 1 of the Kumo V8 Touring Car Series at Sydney Motorsport Park showed us anything, it's that, well, these guys are playing for keeps.
Looks like Haber's down the inside, but he's locked the rears, takes out Assailant.
Here goes Haber down the inside of Evangeli. Did this last lap, but it worked on Waiho.
Oh, this is close contact.
Big contact.
Davies down the inside on Assailant. A little bit of a lock-up.
We see a change for the lead. Davies muscles his way down the inside. Too hot though. Evangeli with a massive moment.
I don't see a winner here. I only see losers. Now Waiho locks it up. Davies is back down the inside to the race lead. 3 wide. He's locked it up. Contact between all 3.
Gets into Geary and they all run wide. What a final lap at Sydney Motorsport Park. This weekend, the boys are back at Malalla, and it looks like the intensity level will continue to rise.
Hi everyone and welcome to Malalla Motorsport Park. Today it's round 2 in the 2013 Kumo Tyres Australian V8 Touring Car Series. This is an historic location. Malalla is the spiritual home of motorsport in South Australia. We're looking forward to a great second round of the series with a third of the field calling this place home. One man who knows his way around here best is Chris Smurden, round winner here in 2011 and in 2012. He's never finished off the podium in the Kumo Series since it started here in 2008. 16-car field for this weekend, packed with ex-V8 supercars. 3-race format is back in play. There's action to be assured. Richard Craile's in the box. All the coverage today here on Speed.
Round 2 of the Kumo V8 Touring Car Series here at Malalla in, let's say, challenging weather conditions. Massive rain overnight and continuing into today as we take a look at the 2.6 kilometre, 8-turn layout that is Malalla Raceway. It's a great circuit. It's hard on brakes and it's also a key circuit for power down. If you can get out of those tight corners, you'll have a good run down the straight into the passing zone at the next corner. The local driver, Dan Day, he's done plenty of laps at this place, will be our chauffeur today. He'll take us round on board. Turn 1, tricky corner. It's bumpy on the entry. You nail that curb on the inside. This is a really difficult turn. Long, late apex. Turn 2. It's called Hangar Corner. It was built on the location of a hangar when this place was an RAAF base back in the 40s and 50s. Turn 3, southern hairpin. Hold the car out very, very wide, late apex, and then feed the power in. And if you're too hard on it, you'll spear yourself off to the outside of the circuit there or spin to the inside. Through the kink, 5th gear, grab 6th. And VMAX up there is 225 k's an hour. And then hard on the brakes, down into the northern hairpin. It's a 2nd gear corner, about 55 at the apex. And then again, feed the power out through the sweeper at 6. This is easy flat. Run the car out wide, and if you're battling for position, you just stay there and cover your ground with the car attacking and make him go around the outside. Turn 7. Fairly easy hairpin, but a good overtaking opportunity. And then through the S's into Clubhouse Corner, the final turn at Malalla, and then out onto the start-finish straight. Brings you around a lap at Malalla Motorsport Park. Part of the appeal of the Kumo V8 Touring Car Series is that some of the cars have been returned to their original liveries. Ian Yang's Commodore and John Vigoda's Falcon are perfect examples.
This car has got a good history as far as this was the car that took Peter Brock out of his last V8 supercar race. And this is one John Clonard was driving at Bathurst through the chase and ran up the back of Plato. And so its claim to fame has been on its roof a couple of times. I remember watching Bathurst at home, and Plato was crippled up the top of the mount. I think he had a flat tyre, so he was working his way back down through back to the pits. He was coming through the chase. Cleland was going quite well. Went to overtake a car on the left-hand side of the chase, out of the chase, and there was Plato, and just clipped the back of him and just skidded on his roof. Cleland got out of the car quite all right, but the poor old thing was a bit worse for wear, that's for sure.
I've always loved V8 Supercars, the only thing I'm sort of really interested in, but I've never ever driven anything before. The car was actually owned by Adam Wallace before me, and THR Developments ran the car. It's the next Greg Murphy's super cheap car, obviously, and it's got a bit of history at Bathurst and Bukakohe. The car had the 5-minute penalty that Murph got in Bathurst, and where he goes into the portable loo, and there's a 5-minute penalty in there, and also the one with Ambrose at the top of the mountain, where they come together and they got out and did all the finger pointing.
Greg Murphy and John Bowe had plenty of battles, and also Brad Jones. So it's good to see them back out on the track again, and even Tony Bengalu's car, the Cat Falcon, they're a great look when they're together. They really are. I love these things to death. I mean, when I bought this car, Mark Shepherd had this car last year. Unfortunately, he smashed the car at Winton the following round. I bought the car at the end of last year. I didn't receive delivery of it until mid-January, and still being repaired. And so I was going to work 5 o'clock every morning, finish at 8:30, open up my business, then work on it in the evening. And we got to the round. I was still putting the last sticker on the door when we got to Eastern Creek. The thing was faultless all weekend. We had a great time. I love them. That's all I can say. I just love them.
Well, racing began Saturday evening here at Malalla Motorsport Park for round 2 of the Kumo V8 touring cars. A twilight race in perfect conditions at a racy Malalla Motorsport Park. Coming into this round, Shay Davies leads the standings a couple of points up on Terry Waihoon. Justin Geary, though, Aaron Noonan, not here this weekend, so championship really is wide open going into the second round.
Very close, Rich, coming into this weekend in South Australia. And have a look how tight it is at the top. Let's have a look at the highlights of race 1. Shay Davies on pole for the second round in a row. It was a fantastic time of day. Look at the lights, look at the way that the cars glowed. Matt Hansen, he was on a charge early after starting on the front row.
Yeah, dominated practice, worked his way forward, qualified on the front row, as you said, didn't get a great start, got shuffled back in that frenetic opening lap, and then worked his way back up the order and made a good pass up at Norton. That was Dan Day working his way through, and then down the inside of Terry Waihoon into turn 7. It was a nice pass by Hansen, but you never count Terry Waihoon out in this series.
No, he was right among it. It was a really busy race. Steve Briffer off the road at turn 1. Contact with Jim Policina as Dan Day captured the action, but Matt Hansen took his first win in the Kumo series. A great result for the Western Australian.
Yeah, mate, it was good. It was a reasonably happy race with that one. We basically just had to clear the field, and once we did that, pulled a bit of a gap and just maintained it.
What was the manoeuvre that won the race for you?
There was probably 2, one under Terry and one over Waihoon.
Talk me through the Terry move.
Just had a lot more under brakes than him and went down the inside there, and that was it. It was done.
Very pleased with his breakthrough victory, but in the intervening 12 hours or so at Malalla, the rain has come. It is pouring down as we get set for round 2 of the Kumo Tyres Australian V8 Touring Car Series. Races 2 and 3 coming your way. Torrential rain at Malalla, heavy winds. This is going to be really difficult stuff.
Oh, Rich, it's nasty, isn't it? It is really slippery out there. A lot of these drivers have never driven a V8 touring car in wet conditions. We get underway on board with Dan Day in the ex-Brad Jones Racing Falcon, and it's all, you just don't want to be beyond about 3rd place on the grid, because good luck seeing anything.
Yeah, these are the most difficult conditions you can get, especially at this place. The wind blows off the plains and causes the spray to go all the way around the racetrack. Great start from Evangelou. He leads them round turn 2. Down to the southern hairpin for the first time. Hansen in behind. He started from pole. And look at Jim Policina. Flying start around the outside.
And good luck seeing in the middle of this spray on this opening lap. Dan Day with a lunge coming from Steve Briffer, the Aussie Tyres Commodore, down the inside. But it's the young gun who's got the switchback. He's got the drive. But out front, Tony Evangelou, the Cat Falcon, had engine problems in practice on Friday. They fought back really well. They missed a lot of track time, but the fight behind is good. Policina second, Hansen third, being lunged by Terry Waihoon, and then Shay Davies, the rookie, the Carrera Cup driver, just there in position 5. And all of these liveried cars, you'd think you're in 2006.
How good was Waihoon in that Saturday afternoon race? He didn't get the best of start, but slowly hunted down that leading group and bought his way into that battle. You can never count this guy back, and after a year out of the seat playing team manager, had the headset on last year, you get the feeling he is just really enjoying himself. There's Shay Davies, Chris Smurden, another to watch, lots of local experience. Steve Briffa into turn 7, and the first one to be caught out by the wet conditions. He spins the Aussie Tyres Commodore at turn 7, and pointing the wrong way as a field of 16 Kumo V8s gets themselves past, and Briffa is going to have to do it from behind.
And a guy on the move is Josh Keane, the young gun in that Team Dynamic, the ex-Jason Richards car, down the inside here on Chris Delsma. He had dramas in race 1, didn't finish. They've been having gearbox problems with this car, but in the wet, he's hooked up, he's flying. Evangelou is too. He leads the way on board with Terry Waihoon in the Lubramax Falcon, the 2011 Kumo Series champion. And this is an ex-Stone Brothers car, an ex-James Courtney chassis that has joined the series this year, but it's really tight at the front. But don't forget, 15-lap race, you need to make these wet weather tyres last, and a lot of the guys haven't used them for months.
Josh Keane qualified 7th, actually, just a second off the pace. Did a good job. Here's Davies down the inside of Hanson. That's your textbook Malalla Motorsport Park overtake. Line them up through the sweeper and fire it down the inside in that very tight second or sometimes first gear corner. Here's Policina on Terry Waihoon, so that's a change of position. Waihoon going round. There's Policina fighting back, and braking, Noons, in these conditions, really difficult. Picking your braking spot, more side by side. Quality stuff to experienced hands in this series. Through the S's into turn 9, and Waihoon eventually works his way by.
And these guys had contact in the last race, the last corner of the opening round at Sydney Motorsport Park. For Waihoon, he thought he'd been roughed up by Policina. It was actually Steve Briffa, but he gave Policina a hit in the door. He did make a phone call in the week after to apologise. It was a case of mistaken identity. But while we're talking about all of that, Tony Evangelou, that Cat Falcon, he's getting away.
Driving away up the road, 1.5 seconds the margin after the first couple of laps, so a handy little buffer, and out in the clear air, I guess you can really say it is, because he doesn't have to deal with any spray, much like Chris Smurden. He's got Dan Day charging up behind. I think we're still all trying to work out what happened at Sydney Motorsport Park, aren't we? That was a wild opener for this season.
On board here with Ian Yang in the ex-Greg Murphy Super Cheap Auto car, having a dice with John Vigotis' Aussie Male Falcon, and Ian's actually had Justin Geary, a round 1 winner, drive this car in Friday practice. They've had some clutch dramas, so they've had to make a change to a second hand clutch that's not quite as compatible. He's back down the inside here on Vigotis, but the thing is with Ian Yang, he's a local. He's one of 6 drivers who are from South Australia. He's done most of his racing around here and most of his test laps, so he knows his way pretty well, and he's been a bit more competitive this weekend. For a guy who only started motor racing last year, he's 50. That's a pretty good effort.
And that THR Developments team that he's running for, they run a couple of cars out of their stable. They're in the northern Adelaide suburbs. Great outfit, and they've really come of age in this series this year, haven't they?
Yeah, running 3 cars out of their workshop. Chris Smurden, Josh Keane, and also Ian Yang. So they're really, really busy. Evangelou, though, leading. Waihoon second. Policina next. Shay Davies chasing. Remember, that's the car that won the series last year in the hands of Josh Hunter for Jose Fernandez's Fernandez Motorsport squad. Matt Hansen, race 1 winner just behind, and we had to go through the stats books. Would you believe that ex-HRT Commodore, John Vigotis is off in the sand? That will no doubt bring out a safety car. He's bunkered, but the Matt Hansen car had only ever won 1 race in the main V8 Supercar Series until Matt Hansen won race 1 here.
Oh, he's doubled the score overnight. Good stuff, Matty Hansen. No wonder he was happy. A really hard-fought victory. Waihoon is catching Evangelou. He's pegged the margin to our race leader, the 2 Fords, the 2 champions of this field going at it. So this is a great fight, and these fleeting 5 cars all starting to bunch themselves up. Policina dropping back, only qualified 8th in the dry on Saturday, but there was 1.7 seconds covering the top 13 cars in qualifying. It's hugely competitive. Just a lock up from Hansen on the outside, bit of a switchback now. Shows the nose, the 2 Holdens dicing, and I think Hansen should clear him.
Now, he will get through, Rich, but I was keeping my eyes open out the window, and I think there may have been a yellow flag down there. Safety car on the circuit, so I wouldn't mind betting that will be redressed when we slow down and Hansen gives the spot back.
He was committed, though, wasn't he? Had the brakes locking. This is what happened to Vigotis. Just in a little bit too deep. Not hard to miss your braking marker in these conditions, and bogged the ex-Brad Jones Racing Aussie Male Ford deep into some of Clem Smith's finest dirt down at turn 7. So, ready for a restart. Evangelou, Waihoon, first, second. And these two guys in these conditions with the experience they've got will be tough to beat, but Shea Davies, the fastest guy, I think it's fair to say, in the series so far. Pollicina off on cold tyres, bounces the car off the tyre strip on the exit of turn 9. If he can get it refired, he has. He should be okay. And change of the lead as well. Wahoon round the outside. Oh, that was a mistake from Evangelou. Too hot into turn 1. He runs wide. They wrap panels, but positions stay the same, remarkably. And Shea Davies buys into this as well.
And how about this? Safety car bunches up the field. Now the action starts. Shea Davies trying to get down the inside on Terry Wahoon. They had contact at this corner in race 1. There was no penalties applied. It was a case of race on, but it is so tight. Kumo Series is delivering in 2013. Pollicina, though, that was weird. That car went straight ahead, almost like he slipped his foot on the throttle pedal or something strange, but Evangelou's hanging on here. Wahoon has got plenty of speed, and Shea Davies is in there too, but Evangelou's wide. Wahoon's through. Davies has got a run, and Hansen will get a run too.
Yeah, Tony's really struggled since this restart notes. He's struggled to get tyres up to tempo. There's something wrong with the number 6 forward. Either way, it has not responded, and he's dropped 2 places now. Davies goes through, and Terry Wahoon takes the lead, or does he? He runs wide at turn 7. And Shea Davies will be in the right position to attack. He's right there.
Let's have another look. Evangelou wide at the hairpin. Wahoon thinks all the Christmases have come at once. He goes through and takes over the lead, and then the fight continues. Now it's Matt Hansen, the race 1 winner, who is getting among it. This is fantastic stuff. We have not had a bad race all season.
This is very, very competitive too. It shows how the intensity has risen over the off-season. It's just taken another step forward, you feel, this year, the Kumo V8s. So Davies going out after Wahoon, who's recovered from that mistake and holds his lead. A couple of car lengths back to Shea Davies in car number 3. Can see on the windscreen there, just below the racing number, a H or an S. That's to differentiate the classes in this category. 2 classes this year, H for H-pattern gearboxes, S for sequential. Pretty simple, but it's a reasonable difference between these cars. Some electing not to upgrade to the sequential box just yet.
For some, that's a case of cost. For some, it's a case of, well, why change? You'll go just as fast with a H-pattern gearbox, as Terry Wahoon is proving in the Lubramax Falcon that leads the way. Sometimes it's a case, too, of driver preference, but at the moment, it is the H-pattern that leads the way in this ex-Stone Brothers car. Shea Davies second, an ex-Ford Performance Racing car. Third is Evangelou, ex-FPR car. Matt Hansen, not hard to guess what that is, an ex-Holden Racing Team Commodore VZ, but it's a great start to race 2 of the Kumo Series. Terry Wahoon leads the way. More action from Malalla in just a second.
Terry Wahoon has won 3 Kumo V8 Touring Car Series races at Malalla before he's looking to make it 4. Jim Pollicina is not, however, as he spears off at turn 3. We're in the middle of a very wet, very treacherous Kumo V8 Series race. It's round 2 of the series. We're at Malalla Motorsport Park. Richard Craill and Aaron Noonan with you, and this is wild stuff.
Jim Pollicina finished on the podium here at Malalla last year. At this rate, I can't see him doing that in 2013.
Top 10 would be lucky at the moment. Here's Wahoon. This has been a very good drive. There was one mistake where he locked a brake going up into turn 7, ran a little bit wide and was under pressure from Davies, but since then he's pulled away from the youngster. He's extended that margin and built a pretty handy lead.
Tony Evangelou back to 3rd spot, Matt Hansen next, and have a look in the background. That's Josh Keane. He started down the back of the field in that Team Dynamic Commodore. He's charging his way forward, and that car, this is its spiritual home. It was its home track for Team Dynamic. It is its home track now for THR Developments. It's going along very nicely. Another young gun, South Australian here, Dan Day in the number 4 Falcon, and he's a guy with plenty of rally experience but has never done this sort of stuff. Wet V8 touring car racing with not much vision out that screen.
Yeah, and he actually goes straight ahead, so I think he's headed towards pit lane. S&J involved in that car. I wonder if that was an issue for visibility, purely visibility. He could not see a thing at that front screen. The Lubramax car off wide. This is our race leader, Terry Wahoon, off again at 7, and Davies goes through to take the lead. Second mistake, and it's cost him big time this time around.
And Davies slips on by. Remember, he won the last race in the opening round at Sydney Motorsport Park. He leads the points coming into this weekend. This car that leads the way is an ex-FPR car. It was new for Jason Bright, the Cat Ford, back in 2005, would you believe? But they're getting plenty of life from these cars. Of course, they've all raced in the main series in V8s, then the development series, and this is essentially becoming an unofficial third tier of V8 supercars, V8 touring cars. The only real difference is Kumo tyres and 500 less revs. And on a day like today, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it's sort of an enforced traction control in a way, isn't it? It doesn't quite get that top end, so helps the power delivery. And I guess more importantly, that's the car that won this series last year in the hands of Josh Hunter.
And Michael Barchi having his first start of the season in an ex-Russell Ingall Caltex Falcon. This is the car that Bobby Jane drove last year. It's in front, you just can't see it. It's behind that bar, of course, the famous Larry bar, the diagonal bar in V8 supercars named after the V8 legend who first introduced them back at the start of the 2000s. Matt Charter here in the 00 Falcon. This is the ex-Colour Scan Danny Osborne car from 1999 that Rodney Forbes then also drove, and he's looking forward to the next round. It's his home track at Winton, and it's an older car. He's a young guy. He and his dad Armin run the car. Not much in the way of budget, but they're working pretty hard at just learning the craft and learning the ropes.
Matt Hansen closing in on Tony Evangelou. It's HRT v FPR. It's a battle of the mid-2000s, but it's in 2013 in the Kumo V8s. It's part of the real appeal of this series. Waihoon's come back to Shay Davies as well. He has not let the young Queenslander get away. So battle for the lead and a battle for third place. First and second, third and fourth.
And we talked a bit of car histories because you do know that that's what I love. But that cat car of Tony Evangelou, Bahrain winner for Jason Bright back in 2006, a former Greg Ritter car. But look at this, Waihoon's back on the scene. Davies, I thought he had a margin that would set him up for the win, but Davies is wide, Waihoon's down the inside, and another change for the lead.
This is great stuff, and mistakes are deciding this motor race. Waihoon made a mistake and it cost him the lead. Davies outbraked himself that time round, and it did the same. This is a mistake from Barch, locks the rears at turn 3. I don't think he got help. I think that was on his own. And the Barossa Valley boy, not too far down the road, and just spears it off. Meanwhile, battle for third is on too. This is good stuff. Evangelou holding out Matt Hansen, who was so good Saturday night in the dry, trying to replicate some of that form in the very wet conditions we see here today.
And Matt Hansen is going to become a dad very soon after this round, but all eyes are forward on the back of that Cat Falcon, which is run by the 501 Performance Team. Why 501? Well, that's the chassis number. They named their team after it.
Les Morel, car owner, very heavily involved in that. He's been an advocate, man behind saloon car racing in Australia for a long time, but a big fan of this series and good mates with Evangelou working on this outfit side by side down towards 3. This is a good battle. Evangelou's hanging on. His car's got better. It wasn't good after the restart, was it? He struggled for cold tyre pace, but the car's up and he's involved in a great fight now with Matt Hansen. Let's talk a bit about that race yesterday afternoon, because I think that showed a lot about where some of the drivers are in this series. Noons, Matt Hansen in the dry was almost unbeatable, as we see it pass down the inside. He's showing some of that form in the wet too.
Oh, contact! Around goes Evangelou. That looked like it was on. It looked like he was in, but he might have been in just a little bit too deep. Contact with the Cat Ford. The right rear door is creased. Big winner though, Josh Keane.
I spoke too soon. Spoke way too soon, didn't I? And you're right, Josh Keane gets net gain out of that too. Meanwhile, Waihoon, Shay Davies, first to second. They've got John Vagotis in the middle. He's from Lithgow in the Blue Mountains, nice part of the world, JV, and was in the series in its early days in an AU Falcon in his own livery, but has since restored this BA into its Aussie Mail livery. So contact up at Northern, that's another look at it. Doesn't tell us too much from that angle. You can't see how deep they were going into that corner and how much offline they were.
Speaking of can't see, Ian Ying couldn't see because he's straight off the road at the hairpin. He's in the dirt, but on a day like today, he should be able to sneak out of there because it tends to compact with the wet weather, and indeed that's the case. He'll manage to get the super cheap auto car out. Michael Barch is also facing in the wrong direction, so they'll manage to get going again, but it is slippery out there. It's really, really tricky, and we haven't had many wet races over the years in the Kumo series, so a lot of these guys may have never driven a V8 touring car in the wet, or indeed the one they're driving right now in the wet, so that's making for difficult times. Nathan Assailant, they're just going through in the yellow Falcon. They've had all sorts of dramas. They broke an axle on practicing Friday. They broke another one on the warm-up lap for race 1. They're just trying to get that thing to the finish. How about Jim Policina's thing? It's had better days.
These two together again. Not too sure we want to see that after the dramas at Sydney Motorsport Park, and also the dramas yesterday. Contact at Turn 1 was pretty controversial stuff, and their teams were quite close to each other up on the Malalla grandstand watching on, and there was some discussions had, there's no doubt, but hasn't Briffa been exciting since he came into this series? He's livened things up.
Yeah, he's been pacey, he's been fast, he's been among a bit of action. He's not afraid to have a go. Lots of experience in utes and production cars and the like. He's got pace on Policina, but not long to go in race 2.
It's been a really good race at the front. These battles all the way down the field. There's Rowdy Barch of former V8 Ute racing fame. He spent some time in this category though, and great to have him back in the series. He gets one in on Ian Yang up at the Northern Hairpin. So gets that pass done. It's been an entertaining race. There's been lead changes the whole way through. A couple of different leaders. It was Evangelou early. Shay Davies had a stint in the lead. He got past Terry Wahoon. Wahoon repassed him as Dan Day works his way past Ian Yang. So this is good stuff by the young South Australian.
And Rich, this is not the position. Remember, he's a lap down fighting back after that trip to pit lane earlier on. Look at the thing, sideways as he grabs 4th gear in these slippery conditions.
Meanwhile, our race leader's bringing it home, Terry Wahoon. What a performance it has been so far. He was very fast yesterday, didn't quite get the outright result, but today in the wet, he has been the master. Win number 4 at Malalla for Terry Wahoon. He brings it home in terrible conditions. They barely need to wave the flag. The wind's doing the job. Shay Davies home in 2nd place, and then a big gap further down the road to 3rd. In fact, this is a good fight. Smurden down the inside. Evangelou on the comeback trail. We saw the slide before. Chris Delsmer in there too. This is good stuff all the way to the line.
I tell you what, Rich, you need a medal if you got to the end of this race without going off the road or having some form of contact. Race 2, wet, wild, but all about Wahoon.
It was a great drive there. Steve Briffa spins it out the final corner.
Go across the line in reverse.
He's going to.
He's done it.
Almost edges out Policina as well. Well, he has been very, very entertaining, the Aussie Tyres driver.
I've seen it all now.
I think we have after today. So Terry Wahoon wins a wild one at Malalla. Shay Davies next, Matt Hansen 3rd, and Briffa just edged out Jim Policina in that race for 9th.
Yeah, look, we had a great run, put a good wet setup into the car, and as I said to you before, I don't mind the wet, and I've got about a 3-second lead on Shay there, and I fired off over at 7, blocked the back brakes, bloody rookie mistake, but managed to get back by him. It was good.
Yeah, it was certainly challenging. Yeah, we had a good car early on, not so good at the end, but overall it was a good race and good fun with Terry. So yeah, no, it's certainly wet and wild, but good fun.
What was the trickiest part of the race for you today?
The initial opening laps, getting past a few slower cars, and then once we got into a rhythm, just trying to maintain drive. It was obviously very hard to get off the corners in the slick conditions, so that was my biggest struggle, and that's what made it a little bit harder for us to challenge Terry, but we'll work on it and get it better for the next race.
Mate, it was pretty tough. The wet's always a bit exciting like that. I mean, yeah, it was tough. Like it was absolutely, there's rivers on the track and dirt everywhere, and you know, a safety car in the middle, which bunches the field up and makes it a bit more exciting. But yeah, it was okay.
One of the new innovations in the Kumo V8s this year is the introduction of the sequential gearbox. Some competitors have elected to run it, some haven't. We thought we'd get both viewpoints.
I guess it's inevitable that we have to change technology to a sequential. There's a lot of upsides and there's probably a few downsides, but mostly an upside. From my point of view, it helps longevity of the motors, so you don't wrong slot anymore and buzz the motor, which inevitably will save cost down the track.
I think that we should be staying to the H-pattern gearbox. They've allowed the sequential box to come into the series this year. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we're still running the H-pattern, and you've just got to look at the timesheets and where people are qualifying that a H-pattern is just as good as a sequential gearbox.
With the sequential, you also have to put a control camshaft in the engine, and arguably you probably gain a little bit somewhere and potentially lose a little bit somewhere else. It's more about reliability and longevity than it is about performance. So I don't think there's much in it in terms of lap speed.
So with two different gearboxes, there are two different driving styles required. Here, the drivers explain.
So with a sequential, basically you just pull backwards on the lever and it goes up to the next gear, so you can't mess it up. But on the way down, you go forward and it just goes down a gear at a time, so you go all the way up and down the gearboxes. Whereas in a H-pattern, you basically slot it wherever you need it, like you would in a traditional road car, which gives you the option of putting it in the wrong gear. particularly on the downshifts.
I just think it's more like driving a normal road car. You've got to use a gearbox. You've got to, you've got to change the clutch, change your gears like you normally would on a road car. And a H pattern, you can't do that with a sequential. You can't do that on a road. You've got to punch down or punch up. And I just think it takes the element of error away from the driver as well. You can make a lot more mistakes with a H pattern.
And while Briffa's stuck with the H pattern gearbox, Pollicina reckons he should go a different way.
I think he needs to get a sequential. I mean, everyone's got their own opinion. It's inevitable. So in a few years' time, when the VEs, they all come with sequentials. H patterns are old technology, and it's whether it happens now, tomorrow, or the next day, it'll happen. So let's just embrace it and move on.
Final race of a big weekend in the Kumo Tyres V8 Touring Car Series from Malalla Motorsport Park. A dry line emerging on a racetrack that was sodden, Aaron Noonan, in race 2. It was a wild race. What's race 3 going to have in store for us today?
Well, Rich, what it is a combined points for the grid. So the results from races 1 and 2 at the front, Matt Hansen and Terry Wahoon locked on points, but Hansen gets pole because of his superior grid position from qualifying earlier on the weekend.
So they're also now, obviously because of that, fighting for the round victory. So that's going to be the story to watch, as well as Shay Davies starting from 3rd. Evangeli goes from P4, and Chris Spurden from 5, always one to watch. Here's Steve Briffett. Notice something different about this car this race?
I didn't recognise him. He's facing in the correct direction as he gets this one underway. Great start from Chris Delsma down the outside in turn 1. This is a longer 20-lap final race. Josh Keane in way deep. Team Dynamic Commodore off through the bitumen, rejoins and gets back into the pack. But it's Hansen, Wahoon, Evangelu, Shay Davies is next. 16 cars make it through turn 2, but it's the ex-HRT Commodore that leads the way. Wahoon making up plenty of time. It's a drying track, but it's not quite dry. It's hard to get grip, but it's hard to get heat in the tyres. But it's Wahoon who's got the run, got the lead, and Hansen now defending from Shay Davies.
Yeah, Hansen got a really slow run out of turn 3, and he'll need to be careful that he doesn't get mugged by everybody else on the run up into the turn 5 hairpin. Davies looking down the inside. So Hansen starts this weekend, have not been brilliant. That was his best of the lot, but was just caught out down at 3. And look at the concertina. Everyone bottles in together in these tight, slow 50k/h hairpins.
And having a look from on board with Dan Day, Matt Charter, the old AU Falcon, had bad visibility problems in race 2. His dad, his team manager, was calling when to brake. It was that bad. Davies is through to 2nd. Hansen back to 3rd. Evangelu charging. All drama in the background. Keane's gone around. There's other cars involved. Jim Pollicina's having a shocker. We got to the bottom of race 2 on that restart. Rich, would you believe it? Massive splash of water coming through the window. He got to the restart in that last race after the safety car. His foot slipped off the brake pedal.
Just one of those things in torturous weather conditions like we saw in race 2. And that car is toast. It's spewing fluid out of the radiator. Dust, debris needs to get in. Here's a look on board with Briffett's car. So just goes in way too hot on the inside. And big contact too. A lot of damage to the front of that ex-Tasman Motorsport Commodore. He goes to pit lane. This was the ex-Jason Richards car. Meanwhile, going forward, Chris Smurden. Never, ever count him out here at Malalla Raceway. He jumps up a position and now follows Tony Evangeli through. Wahoon has cleared out. He's disappearing up the road.
Good fight here though. Rich Dan Day chasing Steve Briffer and also Chris Delsma. That's the ex-David Thexton car at the front of this queue. Delsma's had a really good run, but he's been out of the series for a little while. Still getting used to the newer spec Kumo tyre. It's very different to the one he used a couple of years ago. And he tells me that they're going to put this car back into Fujitsu colours for the next round at Winton in the colours that Jose Fernandez used that car in the development series some years ago. So this whole period livery thing is starting to really catch on around the paddock.
Well, we heard from John Vigotis and Ian Yang earlier on about their move as we see some side-by-side racing. Big moment from Delsma, turn 1. Not the first person to be caught out by that corner and won't be the last. It's a difficult turn 1. There's big bump on the inside. You bounce the car over. Day's going to grab some positions here. He grabbed one. Now he grabs another. Just fires it down the inside at 3. Feisty young driver, busy at the wheel, working hard, but every race getting better, chipping away, learning, and that's what this year's all about.
Being looked after by Keith Rennie, who's been around a long time and run many V8 supercars over the years. Used to run this car, the Matt Hansen car, when Kane Scott drove it in the development series, and now Hansen, the Western Australians, putting the pressure on Chris Smurden, whose record here is phenomenal in V8 touring cars. Remember, the very first round was here in 2008. He's had a second, a third, a first, and and a first. He's good around here, but he's not on target for a podium in 2013.
So 14 races complete so far, 10 won by South Australians. They've been dominant at this place. Adam Wallace has won 5 and Chris Smurden 5 as well.
And what state are you from, Rich?
I would be from just down the road, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, look, got to get parochial. It's a good place. It's a tough place to master, though. South Australia, change of position. Delsma in the walls again. Briffa this time gets by, and Rowdy Barch just up in front in the Falcon gets one as well.
Bit of repair work to the Aussie Tyres Commodore since the first round in Sydney, and they've added IGA Supermarkets on board to this team, so great to have a new sponsor involved in the series, and just chasing down Michael Barch, Dan Day in front, and Nathan Asayla behind, who he's just had a shocking weekend. Failed to start race 1, 11th in race 2, simply trying to salvage something from the weekend. It's a long trip from Toowoomba for not many points.
And they showed great speed at round 1, didn't they, at Sydney Motorsport Park? They were very competitive and ran towards the top 5 or 6 for much of that weekend. So this is a surprise. I guess it shows how different this place and Sydney Motorsport Park are, though. A setup that is good at Sydney might not convert very well here.
Yeah, really struggled with broken axles in practice 2 on Friday. They broke another one on the warm-up lap for race 1. Just starting to string together some consistent running for the weekend, and the weekend's just about at an end. Of course, the next round of the series is at Winton Motor Raceway, round 3, the halfway point of 2013. It's a 6-round national series this year for the Kumho Tyres V8 touring cars. This is close. Briffa, Barch, Day, drivers with varied backgrounds, varied experience levels, but running right among it on the track together.
So it's turn 1 once again. Let's have a ride with Briffa. And you can see it's still wet offline and feeding the power in on a slippery Malalla Motorsport Park race 3. The Kumho V8's winding up. Big finish coming your way right after this break. We're back at Malalla to an ongoing battle for the minor positions in the Kumho V8s, but it's almost as competitive as a battle for the lead, if not more so. Steve Briffa goes down the inside of Michael Barch at the Northern Hairpin and gets the job done. We're midway through race 3 in the Kumho V8s. It's round 2 of a 6-round national series this year, and Aaron Noonan, it has been wildly competitive as always.
Oh, we thought round 1 was good. Round 2's just as good. Matt Hansen, race 1 winner for this weekend, has had a spin. He's right in the middle of the road here. Dan Day gets through, Briffa's through, Barch is through, Asayla gets him, and Chris Delsma picks up a spot as well. So that's a real disaster for Hansen, and looking back through where he's tumbled to, that puts him off the podium for the weekend.
Yeah, he needs some serious recovery work, and all these guys squabbling will actually help Hansen if he can get to the back of this group. There's a replay. Doesn't look like any obvious contact. I think just in too hot, trying to defend his position from Chris Smurden. Locked the rears, Randy went, and that gives clear track ahead to Smurden, and Terry Waihoon, meanwhile, continues to drive off into the distance. This has been such a complete performance, and there might have been some questions about him coming back after a year on the sidelines, but he's answered them firmly this weekend, although he is being caught now by Shay Davies.
Yeah, Waihoon struggled for pace in the Lubramax Falcon in round 1 in Sydney, but just chipped his way through, picked it up as the weekend went on. Shay Davies has got pace. He is all over the back of the Image Racing Falcon, and this looks like a case of Davies having the pace. Now he's got to craft the manoeuvre. He's still learning his way in V8 touring cars. He's been involved in a little bit of drama here and there, but this is a nice move down the inside. Waihoon knows the deal, and he doesn't need to win the race to win the round.
Yeah, and Terry Waihoon's one of those guys, doesn't mind too much about the stats. He'd sacrifice a race win to get the big trophy at the end of the weekend, and if he finishes second, he'll do that, especially with Hansen so far down the field. He was his main rival for that race win, but as we saw at Sydney Motorsport Park, Shay Davies getting to the front at the end of the weekend, though this time slightly less exciting, you've got to say, after that last lap at Sydney Motorsport Park.
Yeah, Rich, that was nuts, wasn't it? One of the best races that you'll ever see, but remember that this race, it's longer than the previous 2, and it's worth more points. 60 points to the winner of this race, and with Davies moving into the lead, it won't give him the round win, but it will hold on for the series lead, so a lot at play here. Look at Briffa on the replay, down the inside of Dan Day. Oh. This is flat strap, 5th gear, grabbing 6th.
And this is from Day's car, and he locked the rears going up into the hairpin. So that was after the change of position, and bang, contact with the wall on the outside, rattles the side of that Falcon, but not the biggest hit. He should be okay. Feisty stuff, and all this works for Matt Hansen. There's a couple more positions he's gained through no work of his own. He's just had track position, cruised his way past, and now he's chasing after Steve Briffa to get another one.
And just getting a bit of smoke off the spreadsheets here, Rich. If he gets by Briffa, that puts him back onto the podium for the weekend. Remember, it's a combined point system to determine the round podium in the Kumo Series. So he's on target, and he's got car speed. This ex-Holden Racing Team Commodore has been pretty much one of the fastest cars here all weekend at Malalla. He had a test here during the week. That really paid dividends. He was strong on Friday in practice. Hasn't quite stitched the weekend together, but that race 1 win was a really good breakthrough, and he's got pace here on Briffa.
Yeah, he was up to a second faster than everybody on Friday, but that might be down to what tyres he was running. But he's done the job this weekend, Matt Hansen. It's by far and away been the most complete performance, I think, of his Kumo career. Here's another position. He'll pass Steve Briffa without too many dramas, and Hansen continues his march forward, gets himself back into podium contention. So this is good stuff. I think a podium would be a good result. Struggled a little bit in the wet today compared to his dry pace, but boy, he's been good. He's just another contender at the front of the field this year, alongside Smurden and Waihoon and Davies and Policina, and the list keeps going on and on.
Yeah, 4th year in the series for Matt Hansen. He originally came in an ex-prancing horse, Falcon AU, stepped it up to the VZ Commodore ex-Holden Racing Team. This is the last VZ that the team made before the VE Commodore was introduced to V8 Supercar Racing. It was on pole at Bathurst in 2006 with Mark Scaife, and the car on board with Steve Briffa. This is an ex-Paul Morris Motorsport car that Steve Owen took to the 2008 Development Series title. So every car in the Kumo Series has a great story. You know, I like a bit of a chassis story.
You do indeed. It's become something of a business, hasn't it? But it's working quite well. Great series, and you know, the cars and the history is all part of it, and lots of people love wandering around the paddock. You can see them at the rounds and asking questions of the cars, and some of the teams starting to display the histories on name boards outside it and their promotional material, which is part and parcel of it. What I also like, Noons, is that you can run your own sponsorship. You don't have to run the historic livery, but you can still sort of relate to what the car's done in the past.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes things instantly recognisable to so many fans who come here to the weekends and watch the television coverage. They really get a sense of, I remember when that car was doing its great stuff at Bathurst or at Sandown or wherever it may have been. This car with Michael Barch, a red Falcon, you probably know it better as a Caltex Falcon. You probably remember it even better for Russell Ingall trying to run over Mark Scaife one day at Eastern Creek.
I remember that very well, funnily enough. It was quite a moment in our sports history, wasn't it? Bring back the biff, I say. That was good fun. So, battle for position. Assailant just closing in on the back, and a name that's been in and around the series for a while, especially in development series terms. The Assailants were very competitive there for a little while, and Barch just grabs a break at Southern, and once you get off into the wet stuff, you're not stopping. You're going a long way, almost back to the Malalla Township, which is a couple of k's down the road. Here's a look. Just turned in, and as we've seen a couple of times this weekend, rear brakes locked, you lose steering control, the back wants to overtake the front, and you end up driving straight down into the very wet undergrowth.
Has had better history here, Michael Barch, over the years in the Kumo Series, finished 3rd in 2011. Izzy Ambrosio here, ex-Perkins Engineering Commodore that Larry drove, Jack drove, just about every Perkins known to man's had a drive of this one.
I was talking to Jack about this car a while back, actually, fond memories of his time in this car. Of course, he spent a season in the main game, now in and out of the development series with an enduro drive as well. Here's a battle for Goddess, just being passed by Shay Davies, our race leader, and you can see the margin 1st to 2nd now. So in the last couple of laps, Davies just pulling out 3 or 4 seconds on Terry Waihoon, and Waihoon driving to the numbers now, just holding on to 2nd place to try and seal that round win.
And Davies with pace has driven away, so he's going to bookend round 2, just as he did round 1 at Sydney with a win in the final race. If he can keep it all rolling along, he hasn't yet proven to be able to stitch together a weekend, but that's what this series is about. This is why he's here, learning the cars. He'd never been to Malalla before this weekend, never done a lap around the place, so he's still learning all the time. Tracks, cars, car styles, tyres. The Kumo very different to what he's used to on other cars in open wheelers and Carrera Cup cars. There's a lot to take in, and this is the ideal place for it.
Terry Waihoon getting past Vigotis as well. JV's had a reasonable showing this weekend.
He's had a bit of drama. There was a run-in or two with Izzy Ambrosio earlier in the weekend, and a little trip to the sand trap as well. But great to see this car running. It was the car Mark Shepherd drove here last year to pole and a race win for Terry Wyhoon's team. It was crashed at Winton, fully repaired, back in the Aussie Mail colours, former Brad Jones racing car. Jason Bright used it there for a time when he had to borrow a chassis after his regular car was damaged. So it, like so many other cars, as we keep on saying, has a great history, but look at it. It looks fantastic.
It's a time warp, isn't it? It takes you right back to watching the cars race as they were on the day.
You're making me feel old.
We are getting there a little bit. This race getting old as well. It's not too far from a conclusion. And it will be Shay Davies out in front, barring mistakes. And don't forget, we've seen a few this weekend. This is the kind of track that can catch you out. And windscreen wipers on these cars, interestingly enough, as they go up to their hairpin. A light rain shower just coming over the circuit, just to make things a little bit difficult in the closing stages of this race.
I'm looking to the horizon, Rich. It's dark, it's mean, it's ugly, and I reckon we might just get the last few laps in before another major rainstorm comes shuffling through this Malalla area. But you can see the spots on the camera.
It's
you can see Ambrosio's off the road. It's got slippery again, so they've got a different track to contend with, almost within sight of the checkered flag.
And remember, in race 2, the lead changed twice due to mistakes. Wyhoon passed Davies, Davies passed Wyhoon, and vice versa. Entertaining stuff, and Wyhoon's come back to the leader. So the experience coming to the fore now in these tricky conditions, and Wyhoon with so many laps in these cars, just pegging that gap, keeping the pressure on. And every time Davies looks in one of the mirrors on his Falcon, he'll see the lights of the Lubramax Ford behind him. We'll know that the former champion is there and waiting.
Remember, they're on slick tyres. Remember that they do have some heat in them, so a little bit of water's not too bad. But Wyhoon is eating into this margin. This is a great fight. Former champion. Wyhoon's been there and done it. Former Oscar champion. He's done NASCAR. He's done the main game. He's done the development series. He's been in this series since it began. Shay Davies at the other end of the experience spectrum. It's a case of young versus not quite so old, but it's a really great contrast, and that's what we're seeing more and more in this Kumo series as it continues to evolve.
And it started last year with Josh Hunter and Morgan Haber, guys like that coming into this series against the experienced hands like your Smurdens and your Evangelis and Terry Wyhoon as well.
A point I'd like to make, Rich, is that you're not going to prove yourself as an absolute superstar in this series. It's just a nice way to get in and get going. Learn the cars, learn some tracks, learn the nature of these heavier cars. You're still going to have to go through the development series if you want to be a superstar in V8 supercar racing. But I think a lot of guys will look at this series rather than maybe going Formula Ford, Carrera Cup. If they're keen and they've got their eyes on V8s, this is the place to probably have a little bit of a run, test the waters and see how you go.
Well, there's plenty sitting back and looking at this going, gee, it's good, the racing's good, it's competitive, it's feisty, and it's a good breeding ground for drivers, and it's a good place for guys like Terry to continue to race competitively at the front of the field. The gap continues to close. It's under 2 seconds now between the two of them as they start the final lap at Malalla. This is a pressure cooker moment for Shay Davies. We saw at Sydney that he could attack. Now, how can he defend? How can he hold this pressure out from one of the most wily drivers in the business?
He looks like he's got enough car speed, Rich, in this late part of the race, but look at the spots on the lens. This is almost on the verge of a shower sweeping through this region. You've got to be so careful. They're so close to the end. Wyhoon doesn't need to win the race to win the round, and if he wins this round, he'll tie Chris Smurden for the all-time most round wins in the Kumo Series history. So there's a stat on the line here too.
There's plenty on the line, no doubt. Davies wants a win. Wyhoon would like a win, but would settle for the round result, but he won't stop applying the pressure until he gets to that checkered flag. Final few corners, Shay Davies, twice in 2 rounds, will win race 3 of the Kumo V8s, but Terry Wyhoon, he took a year out of the series last year to run his team, to grow the business. It's paid off in his driving because he's going to win the round. Davies takes the race at Malalla, and Terry Wyhoon wins the war overall. He's got the round victory in South Australia. Great drive from 2 very competent drivers at the front of the field.
And that's the first time Wyhoon has won a round here at Malalla Motorsport Park, and it brings him to within 1 point of Shay Davies in the series. We've got a pretty good championship coming up this year. Tony Evangelou struggled for car pace this weekend, but was pretty pretty consistent, had a little bit of a drama with Matt Hansen earlier in the weekend. He brings it home next, Smurden next through. Hansen has recovered, he's clawed back ground, he will be on the podium for the weekend.
And I thought Josh Keane, good solid end to his weekend, didn't start really well, but he bounced back very nicely in tough conditions today.
More gearbox problems for that team. Maybe it's time to go to a sequential for Winton.
Running through results, Briffa was 6th in the end, Nathan Assail at 7th, down to Ian Yang, the local boy, completing the top 10.
Apparently, I'm equal with Chris Smurden on round wins through the whole series, or category if you like, since its inception 5 years ago. So got to have another round win, knock the old bugger off.
How does that make you feel?
That's good. Yeah, it makes me feel like I've been around a long time as well. But some of these young guys that keep me on my toes, I tell you. But it was good racing there today. I love that wet race, and Shay had a fair bit of speed there in that last one. So, but good to win a race here.
No, race one was certainly a bit of a challenge. We got turned around and had to fight back, and finally got up for the win in race 3, which is really good. But it was some good racing all over, and it was nice for us to have the speed that we did.
Talk me through your winning manoeuvre in that final race.
Yeah, it was. I didn't really try and muck around too much. I just wanted to get through and then put a gap in, and then the rain halfway through made it a little bit more challenging. But thankfully, I had a bit of a buffer. I gave it a bit more courtesy and backed off a little bit, and then it eased off. So that was great.
It's not where I wanted to be at the end of the weekend, but hey, at least come away with some points.
And you started so well.
I know that's the problem. Didn't finish up too well.
What happened?
Had a bit of drama in the wet, and then obviously the last race just fell back and had a bit of a spin and had to come from the back and get back up. So.
Well, it's been good stuff this weekend. Shay Davies gets his trophy. So too, Terry Waihoon, a round winner at Malalla Motorsport Park for the Kumo Tyres Australian V8 Touring Car Series. We've got a feisty little championship battle on our line as well. 1 point, the margin between Davies and Waihoon. Hansen, Smurden, Evangelou and Briffa, in fact, all pretty close together as well, with Chris Delsmith, Justin Geary, Nathan Assail and Jim Policina rounding out the top 10.
Well, another exciting round of the Kumo Tyres Australian V8 Touring Car Series here at Malalla Motorsport Park in South Australia. The next time we see you, it's round 3, Winton Motor Raceway in country Victoria. It is Victoria's action track, and the Kumo Series no doubt will deliver. Looking forward to getting there. Hope we see you there in late June. See you next time here on Speed.
More side-by-side quality stuff. Dave Briffa into turn 7, and the first one to be caught out by the wet conditions.
And Shay Davies is in there too, but Evangelou's wide. Waihoon's through. Davies has got to run.
Policina off on cold tyres, bounces the car off the tyre strip. His car, and he locked the rears.
Contact. Around goes Evangelou.
Davies takes the race at Malalla. Terry Waihoon wins the war overall.
Coming up after the break, we wind back to 2006 and head to the Sydney Superdome as we look back on the 4th round of the 2006 Australian Supercross Masters.